My guest today is fashion designer Stella Carakasi. Stella Carakasi has been a fashion disruptor since 1993 when she launched the first highly controversial hemp clothing collection in the United States. Her work continued to raise the eco-fashion bar and help moving the emerging green revolution forward. Not one to sit and watch the market change around her, in late 2018, more than 25 years in the international fashion business, Stella Carakasi took the gamble and left wholesale behind. Her values no longer aligned with the unsustainable consumption appetite and out-of-sync seasons the traditional fashion calendar dictated. She relaunched her namesake brand as a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business in order to connect directly with her loyal customers and fully embrace the concept of sustainability in her design and manufacturing processes. Less is more when less is better became her guiding star. Sustainability goes beyond working with eco-friendly materials and ISO certified partners throughout the entire supply chain. It means producing and consuming less while expecting more from each style. As a designer, Stella Carakasi offers styles in a tight capsule that easily mix and match to create a wide variety of fresh looks that makes getting dressed easy. Her obsession with quality and fit results in comfortable, sustainable, and timeless designs, which defines her style. She is passionate about creating a more positive fashion experience for women that feel left out of the fashion conversation due to age, body, shape, or size. Her styles are a fashionable antidote to the limited aesthetic variety that has long dominated this apparel sector, where styles are being produced without empathy for the environment and marketed to a non-diverse, youth-obsessed demographic. Women of all shapes, sizes, and ages deserve to be seen and feel visible, and Stella Carakasi is on the leading edge of this fashion revolution. Welcome, Stella. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Glennis. I'm really honored to be on your podcast, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So before we start, I wanted to tell everyone just how we met, because I think it's kind of a funny story.
It is.
So Stella reached out to me after a online network event through Text World and Fashion Mingle. However, I just wanted to tell you that I had a little of a technical glitch before going on, about 15 minutes before the conference was supposed to start, and I was a guest presenter on part of a panel that day. Okay, so I thought for some reason I thought of rebooting my computer, and so I did that, and as soon as it restarted, I got a message saying installing new OS, 25 minutes remaining. And so I started freaking out, really, and going, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? And I tried going on my phone, logging on, but the password wasn't working, and I needed the password, which was on my computer. I tried booting up another computer that I had. However, I didn't have the meeting link, which was in the emails that was on my computer. And so here I'm like having this major panic attack of like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be late or I'm gonna miss this whole thing. What am I gonna do? But luckily my computer restarted and I only happened to be about maybe 5 minutes late. And when I came on, the host was, in the process of doing introductions and it was my turn. And so she introduced me and I was here just like, really flustered from what had just happened. But I think it just all worked out in the end because Stella reached out to me and wanted to connect with me. And she said she loved what I said during that conference. And when we chatted in our initial meeting, like I told her what happened. And I said, I really don't even remember what I said. It was just really funny. Yeah, so I just thought I'd share that story.
It's a great story. Yeah, it's funny, but you pulled it off. You are a pro. That's why, right? And it was very meaningful.
Yes,
So
I pulled it together in the end.
you did.
So, and I'm really
You
glad
really did.
this worked out. So, I mean, that's part of life, right? Like these things just happen. Um, and
And
yeah,
and
just
if you
be
think about it, it is so reminiscent of our industry in general, right? At the end of the day, you ship a perfect product, you are on time, and nobody ever knows the disasters that happen in the background. And
oh,
that's what being a pro is all about. You show up and you pretend everything is perfect,
nobody
right?
sees the fires
No,
that go on behind the
no,
scenes, right?
nobody. And you know, it's really unfortunate because that is never really being portrayed. Like, even with really popular shows like the runway shows on TV, right? Um, it would be so nice to also show the reality
Mhm.
because everybody has this glamorous image of what fashion is about. And nobody really tells the story that it ultimately is a lot of work and it's
Yes.
non-glamorous work. And the glamour really happens in the glossy magazines and the glimpses we catch on the runway, and which
Mhm.
is make believe. And I think that's part of our industry, right? But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's a lot of work. And I think it would be really interesting for somebody to actually portray that as well.
Oh, that would be amazing if they like could go behind the
Right?
scenes and follow, a designer at work for the
Right?
day and
Right?
really see what
Right?
goes on, right?
Right. And I think I kind of shared with you in our initial interview that I was approached by Project Runway a couple of years ago, which really took me by complete surprise because I hadn't really applied. And it was a complete honor that knowing that my name is clearly out there and it's circulating and somebody like Project Runway would take notice. And without making a long story short, I ended up turning it down for various reasons. I had to prioritize being in business. Clearly I couldn't be away for weeks on end in order to be recording a show, and I had a young daughter and she wouldn't really have done well with me being away, so I had to think about that as well. But the main reason for me also was, while I understand TV shows are about sensationalism and entertainment, and it would have done probably incredible things for my brand, even not winning, just to be on the show. But at the end of the day, you know, and I had that conversation with the people that interviewed me initially, I it just doesn't sit well with me because reality is not being portrayed. So it was a multitude of reasons, and I ended up not going. And people have told me you're crazy for turning that down. But again, you know, it's like, where's the reality in all of that? And maybe reality is not fun.
Mm. Yeah.
But then again, reality shows, you know, are so popular. Why not show the back scene of what's really happening with fashion, right?
Yeah, it just maybe it makes people uncomfortable or something, or just
Right,
showing, the unglamorous side of things, and just like, they don't
right,
want to show that ugly side of fashion.
right, right, right.
So I would love for you to take us on your journey of being a fashion designer, how you were able to launch and scale several successful brands. You were the first hemp clothing company in the US.
That's right.
So that was a bit controversial at the time, right?
Crazy. Yeah, definitely. So, straight out of design school, I actually graduated in 92. Now you can do the math, how old I am. I had the great fortune of being shipped off to Indonesia for my first job. It was a local company that was producing a lot of batik printed clothing. And through that company, I ended up meeting my business partner, who at the time was trying to strike out on his own with his brother. And long story short, we really were a great combination because I brought the creative and the technical know-how into the business. One of my partners, Stephen, was definitely the business brain, and Alan was the marketing wizard. So together we decided, okay, we are going to start our own company. And I'm not going to go into the long story, but my business partner, Stephen, ended up going to a fair in San Francisco. We are based in Berkeley, next to San Francisco. And he saw hacky sacks made out of hemp. And that triggered the idea by saying, my God, what if somebody would make actually clothing out of this fabric? So he approached me, and of course I had no clue. It's like, what the hell is hemp, right? And when I started doing my own research, I'm like, oh my God, you know, these are all the crazy pot smokers. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm a legitimate designer. Long story short, I did my research, and through my research, I actually did find out, my God, you know, here's this incredible sustainable fabric that can be harvested 4 times a year without pesticides. And why aren't we using it? And without going into this long story again, in my research, I did find out that it was legal to be grown until the petrochemical industry in the late 30s, early 40s really got a hold and basically put a halt on hemp production because they wanted to bring nylon and polyester and all the other petrochemical fibers onto the market. And then during World War II, when the US were building all these fleets, they clearly needed a lot of rope. And in order to be able to keep up with the rope production for all the warships, they launched a campaign called Hemp for Victory. And farmers were allowed to grow hemp again because it is a fast growing crop. And after World War II, it was outlawed again. So that for me, you know, was like the trigger going, wait a minute, you know, being a little bit of a rebel myself, I'm like, this is interesting. Then one of my partners ended up backpacking through China because we couldn't find the fabric anywhere. And he decided to go to China because that's where the fabric came from. And in 93, China is not what it is today. There was still a lot of travel restrictions. And when he finally, after a long search, stood in a hemp field and he found the one mill that was producing the hemp fabric, the owner of the mill was really surprised that this young kid from the US wanted to buy this fabric because he said, we bury our dads in this fabric. So it was considered the death cloth, right? So anyway, Stephen came back with a couple of big duffel bags with the fabric. And I was still a little bit on the fence, not sure, what is it going to look like? What can we do with it? How is it going to react? It became very clear that it had huge potential. It was very coarse, it was canvas-like, but we ended up doing the research and development. And in late 93, we launched our first collection made out of hemp. And boy, was that controversial, because I don't have to tell you the political implication that came with it, right? But what I did find so interesting, in the early 90s until probably the late 90s, there was such a huge push towards legalization. And while I did not have a political agenda, I always had my heart in the sustainability aspect of it. I did support, you know, the legalization, and we got really wrapped up in all of this, and I met some incredible people through it that I'm not going to name drop right now, even celebrities, and that kind of put us on the map. We became a big fish in a small pond. A lot of people ended up jumping onto the hemp push, and a lot of small companies, grassroots companies emerged, and everybody was doing hemp clothing. But unfortunately, a lot did not have the clothing background, and it gave hemp a very bad reputation. It was crunchy granola, the stuff was rough, it fell apart. Everybody that had an experience with our clothing, you know, loved it. But we felt like we pushed against this constant wall of no, no, we tried it and it didn't work out. So then in the late 90s, after a major approached us, a major department store, we did an amazingly successful run with overalls and a cargo pant for them. But then it became a little bit price prohibitive, so we switched to organic linen. That opened up the door for us to actually embrace other fabrications, organic cottons, a lot of recycled materials. And all of a sudden, you know, we entered mainstream fashion. We were no longer the big fish in a small eco pond. We became a small fish in this big pool of mainstream fashion. Regardless, we grew the company and found success, opened up a lot of small boutiques across the country. We started doing major business, department stores, private label for catalogs, and that took a life on its own. And then during the economic collapse of 2008, it became very apparent to us that we weren't really keeping our momentum of constant growth. And while we did ride out the downturn, we saw the gradual decline. And then the conversation in 2010 started where my business partners kept saying to me, put your name on the label. At the time, we were Two Star Dog. And the story in my head always was, I don't need to be the name of the company. I like doing the magic behind the scenes. No need for me to be in the forefront. But my business partners really kept pushing for it. So in 2012, we decided to make the switch. We shut our first company down. Two Star Dog was no longer, but it became the parent for the new brand called Stella Carakasi. I took it very personal, having my name on the label, and I decided, well, if we're going to be Stella Carakasi, and I'm no longer going to be in a moderate price point, we're going to switch to a better price point, then I need to make sure that I identify with that customer as well. So we started working with better fabrics. We started developing better fabrics with the mills. And within a pretty short amount of time, we gained great traction, and we added a Canadian distributorship, we added an Australian distributorship, we had a European distributorship. So the company actually grew really fast. But with it also came, you know, expanding our staff. And long story short, you know, we ended up producing over 240 pieces per year, because we had representatives in showrooms across the US, and it was never fast enough, it was never cheap enough, it was never big enough. The message of not being enough after having had all this experience, right, of doing domestic manufacturing, doing overseas manufacturing, building two international brands, traveling internationally, traveling nationally, you know, to trade shows, to visiting the factories. I mean, you really name it. All of a sudden, you know, I had to take stock, and I had to come back to my roots, because I felt like I kind of lost my footing. I was trying to listen to everybody and please everybody, and while growing and maintaining the growth, and paying attention to what was really going on in the industry as well, and paying attention that direct-to-consumer became a thing, and a lot of these younger customers or brands saying, we're not going to follow the traditional fashion calendar. And I decided, you know what, Stella, it's time to really take stock of what matters again. And we took the big, crazy, scary step forward of pulling the plug on Stella Carakasi wholesale, and decided in late 2018 to relaunch as a direct consumer company. And there are multiple reasons why we decided to do that. One of it was I kind of had lost my footing, and what was really true to me, you know, I had to please the major department stores and the catalog companies that we dealt with in using fabrics that were not sustainable, just because we had to hit a price point. And they had all these requirements that really didn't align with what my initial intent was of when I entered this business. And did I really want to compete with fast fashion that constantly produces, you know, new stuff on the market, which is ultimately so environmentally damaging, because most of the stuff, it's not sustainably manufactured. The fabrics are not sustainable. It ends up in landfill. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, who have I become of listening to everybody that wants certain pieces from me? And it takes a lot of courage to actually really draw the line and say, no more. I'm going to go back to my roots, and I'm going to clean house, and I'm really going to reestablish my values, and I'm going to start reinventing myself and hold true to these values, and relaunch a company that I believe in, and also take all the big learning curves and filter it into who I want to be, and who do I want to do this for? And what became very clear to me over having the opportunity of connecting with so many women over the span of my long career is that, believe it or not, so many women don't feel spoken to, because, like it or not, mainstream fashion is still focused on the young and the beautiful and the ideal. And if you really do your research, you will find out that less than 20% of the female population have the ideal slim hourglass figure. And then, I took it further thinking, well, when I went in design school, from what I remember, all the design students clamored for the skinny dress form. We wanted to design for that ideal hourglass figure. We wanted to be glamorous. We wanted to put our own stamp of our own creative expression onto things. And that to me really wasn't what it's all about. Listening to the customer that has concerns about not having the ideal, right, body shape. And furthermore, let's question it. Who decides what is the ideal, for crying out loud? It creates so much insecurities in women, right? And as much as I hate those labels, in order to bring a visual picture forth, there is the apple shape, there is the rectangle, there is the triangle, there is the reverse triangle shape, and that accounts for really 80% of the female population. And to me, that was like ding, 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 right? Who designs for them? And then, like it or not, and we know at this point, it's not a secret, that the American average size is a size 16. Well, then I started doing my research, and the cool cats out there, the cool brands that we all love, well, they offer anywhere from a size 0 to a size 12. Sometimes they offer a size 14. Wow, so where does it leave the average American woman? Well, guess what? She's being told, you gotta go shop plus size. And while the plus size industry has certainly gained enormous momentum, and has grown over the years, I sat and I thought to myself, well, who on earth wants to go shop in plus size just because I happen to be a size 16? To me, that is still associated with body shaming, and it still, like it or not, has a stigma attached to this. So I, in my own head, took it further and thinking, well, why can I create a brand that actually encompasses a size 2 as well as a size 18, eventually 2022, that's what I'm working towards right now, without calling it plus? Why can't it just be part of a regular size run? If a size 16 or an 18 comes to shop for my brand, I'm not going to tell her, oh no, you have to shop in the plus size department. I don't even want to have a plus size collection. I just want to have a regular size run, right?
Yep.
So, and then it's like, wow, here's the design challenge. Well, how can I produce products that are equally flattering on a smaller frame as it is on a bigger frame? And I will not say that everything in my collection works for everybody, but I approach my design process of really being mindful of knowing that there is enough variety within the small assortment that I offer these days that will actually encompasses my goal of saying there is enough here to make you feel beautiful. And I'm not going to tell you that you need to lose weight. Of course, if you want to be fit and healthy, by all means, do what you need to do. My message is embrace who you are. Embrace who you are and stand in your strength and beauty. And we all get dressed every day, right? Some do it subconsciously, others do it more consciously. At the end of the day, we cannot deny the fact that clothing has power. Power and how it makes us feel. I know that we all had the experience of putting something on and it's like, this doesn't feel right in general, or it just doesn't feel right for the day. And we also know what it feels like to put on something that we love or something that is brand new and it makes us feel like $1,000,000. And the point that I'm trying to make with that is if you put something on, and especially if shopping is a chore, if you've had so many negative experiences, I can't afford it, or it doesn't work on me, and finally you find something that actually does work, and you stand in front of that mirror and you go, oh my God, this looks good on me. The energetic shift that happens in that very moment, how you feel about yourself and how you show up in your world, whether it's in your family, with your friends, in your professional life, it has such a huge effect. Call it subliminal, it's powerful because you show up differently. And while I know clothing is just a tool, it ultimately starts with your own inner story. Even if it's just for a short-lived amount of time, you have elevated your energetic presence, and that is magic, right? So taking all of that into account, I really wanted to be a brand that here's my muffin top, my big butt, my lopsided chest, my big arms. I mean, I've really heard it all. And stopping that self-criticism. Women are notorious for standing in front of the mirror and picking out everything that's wrong with them. And that really comes from the messages that we are being fed, right?
It's
And
so true.
so, yeah,
Yeah, I've seen like this cartoon or something image showing a picture of a woman standing in front of a mirror and her seeing all her flaws, but a man is looking at himself, sees himself as like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like
yeah. And
that's
let's ask yourself, why is that, right? And
yeah.
it's because of all the media messages that we're being fed. And we needed to be the pretty girl. We needed to be the perfect wife. We needed to be the perfect daughter. All of this, instead of just embracing who we are in our light and our unique beauty that we represent. With men, they don't have to battle all of that, right? Women do. And I think there is a shift right now. And I really want to be part of the change making shift. And I do it through the expression of what I produce and what I offer. And while it might be a small contribution, you know, it is a contribution. And I think my message needs to be heard. And to take it further, I really would love to inspire other designers, other brands to hear me and to follow me in that change that needs to happen. I think now more than ever, yeah, we are in a terrible pandemic, but this is also our opportunity to embrace the much needed change. And change needs to happen on multiple levels, but it also needs to happen, especially in fashion, because our industry has been hit really hard. And I think part of it has to do that over the past 50 years, fashion hasn't really changed that much, right? They were the trade shows, they were the showrooms, they were the trade secrets. And then you started seeing the younger brands with direct-to-consumer messages, which was the first disruption that ended up causing so many bigger brands to file for bankruptcy, right? But now we have to go further because we have to change how fashion is going to have a future, and we need to get real. We need to get real in who we are producing for, what does that customer ultimately need, and what message are we bringing forth. And while I love the sustainability awareness that actually has happened over the past 27 years that I've been in this business, I remember we were looked at as being foo-foo, cuckoo, tree-hugging hippies.
Yeah.
What do you mean, fashion and sustainability in the early 90s, right? I love the fact that we have this awareness and everybody is pushing sustainability. But what I also want to speak to that is, don't lead with it. It needs to become a normal, not a media sensationalism, greenwashing. It needs to be the norm, right? Lead with fashion. At the end of the day, we are in the fashion business for being in the fashion business, and it's up to the brands and up to the manufacturers and up to the designers to make those choices while I am sustainable, I will work towards becoming fair trade certified, hopefully become a B corporation. I mean, this is all in the planning for me. It is up to me to make decisions. Who am I manufacturing with? Who am I partnering with? How can I push my conventional mills to actually start incorporating sustainable, eco-friendly fibers? I mean, all of that is up to me, right? And it's up to the various brands. And while I don't want to guilt trip any of my customers to buy eco. Nobody wants that. I want them to love what I have to offer. And then the backstory happens to be, oh, and it happens to be organic, and it happens to be eco-friendly, and it happens to be recycled, or whatever it is that you're using. But don't necessarily lead with that, because I think we're kind of tired of the message. We know, I think we're very aware. Now it's up to us as designers and manufacturers to really make the change happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a responsibility as designers, manufacturers, and brands to do that.
Right.
And I just want to read this quote, which I love. It's taken off your website. On your About page, it says, "We are on the leading edge of this fashion revolution. We are not ruled by anything of the moment or by trends. Instead, we produce quality garments that have longevity. We are body shape, size, and age inclusive, and choose eco-friendly materials and sustainable manufacturing practices throughout the entire supply chain, which is not only a choice, but the way of the future."
Absolutely. Thank you for
I love
for reading
that.
that. Yeah, yeah.
I love that because it really embodies, I think, your what you stand for as a brand, and especially your values. And that's really what, resonated with me just when I read your background story and your bio and everything. What really stood out to me is your values and as how you stay true to who you are and your brand
Yeah.
values. Do you want to speak more about that and why is that important?
Okay. So, and I want to share that with a lot of other brands and especially young and emerging designers, right? Um, it is so important to really start with values, right? And while I'm also guilty of having veered off the values over the span of my career, what is important to really realign, right? And I will not veer from my values anymore. And that comes with making really difficult choices. And my most difficult choice was to leave wholesale behind, to leave my distributorships behind, and basically reinventing and starting from scratch. And that was a huge financial hit, a huge financial setback. But it was this moment of truth, right? Who are you in the world? Because if you don't love what it is that you do, and if you are not solid in what it is that you believe, and in order to bring that authentically into this world, then how are you possibly going to survive the extreme highs and lows on the course of your business? Because let me tell you, business is not for the faint of heart. And while we might all start out with what it's going to be like, I'm telling you, there will be moments where you will be sitting in the abyss, chewing on glass and wondering, what on earth have you done to yourself and why are you doing it? And if you don't have those values and the pure vision that is driving you and pulling you forward, then you're probably not going to make it. And I think that's why it's so important to believe in your vision and to have your foundation of solid values underneath your feet, which is what's going to carry you to find the doors while the walls seem to be closing in on you. And that takes a lot of faith, and that takes a lot of inner strength, and that clearly also takes a lot of inner knowledge, which eventually you gain over time. But I think staying true to your values is what's going to be the driving force. And I think anybody that has an authentic message, it shows in the product you're producing and it resonates with your customers. And I think nowadays, more than ever, having an authentic voice and being real matters to customers. There is such a shift and how we approach how and where we spend our money. And if anything we have learned from this pandemic is to live with less. And I think that also has to filter through the minds of anybody that produces any tangible product, and to focus more on quality than on quantity, right? And that also feeds beautifully in with sustainability. Early disruptors in the direct to consumer space basically said, we are not going to follow the unsustainable fashion calendar where we have to put garments on the market before the actual season starts, and then just to generate sales we have to put it on sale already, which is insanity. And then to keep feeding this unsatiable appetite that eventually ends up in landfill, it's like, no, we are going to produce more non-seasonal product. We will be focusing on quality. We don't have to necessarily always go on sale, because guess what? If you buy this and you love it, you're going to have it, for many seasons in your closet. And it is user friendly, and it is comfortable, and it is flattering, and it is quality, and it happens to be sustainable. And this is really what rings true for me. So the small capsules that I produce every so often are mix and matchable. And it keeps comfort in mind, it keeps flattery in mind, it keeps sustainability in mind, and it keeps inclusivity in mind. And again, I'm not for everybody, and I don't want to be for everybody. I want to be for that segment of the population where my product fits the market. And if you really find product market fit, and within that, you focus on your growth, well, it's win-win. Because at the end of the day, we do run a business, and at the end of the day, we want to find that perfect formula, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I think if you listen to your customer, whoever that customer is that you set out to cater to, but also be mindful that you might start out somewhere and the market tells you otherwise. Follow that. This is going to be where you need to be. So it's important to keep that communication open, right? And then bring your authentic voice to that. So again, stick to your values, know who you're designing for, and offer a product that is quality and reflects your values, because being authentic is so crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love everything you said. And I think it all comes back to your ideal customer, right? Who is it that you are designing for? And so do you want to walk us through your design process a little bit?
Sure.
How do you start? You start with a person in mind, who
well,
you're designing for?
I certainly have my avatar, right?
Yes.
And at this point, over the many years that I've been in the business, it has become very clear to me who that is. She does not have necessarily the ideal body shape, but I don't exclude the ideal body shape, because inclusivity, means you can be in your 20s, but you can also be in your 80s. And you can have the ideal hourglass, or you can be a size 20, right? So that in itself is a pretty wide pool. It's like, holy cow, what's going on here? Wow. At the end of the day, you want your customer to feel beautiful in her skin. So like it or not, there is a creative process, clearly, but my creative process is also informed by data. And these days, you have to have your data points, right? And how I gain my data points are, I am in communication with my customer, right? I do that through surveys, and I get a lot of feedback, and I particularly focus also on the negative feedback, right? It's not like my ego gets in the way. No, I listen. Oh, this didn't fit, or this doesn't look good on me, or I didn't like the color, or whatever that might be. And I collect that data, as well as I collect the positive data. And then I try to really improve what it is that I have to offer. At this point, I know my best sellers, right? I have my evergreens that you can produce season after season. You just offer them in different colors and eventually in different fabrics, all of that. But you also follow, I follow a little bit of what's going on in mainstream fashion. oh my God, I'm probably going to be crucified for saying that right now, but I am going to say it. There's a lot of nonsense out there. There is so much nonsense out there that I'm thinking to myself, okay, I will put that nonsense under creative expression because fashion can also be considered art. But let's get real. It's a commercial product. And if you don't have a customer that buys that, well, you don't have business, right? So I'm informed by my customer of what she really needs. She needs to have practical clothing that works from morning to evening, that with a change of a shoe or an accessory, when we're open again, she can go out to dinner. Comfort is key. And having a clothing that is flattering. Just because you're bigger doesn't mean you want to wear something that is like a potato sack or that you need to layer in order to hide your body. No, there's a way of making a bigger body also look very beautiful and proportionate. So that is definitely the challenge as a designer. I'm not only the creative designer, but I'm also technically trained. So pattern making skills come into place, right? There are a lot of style lines that you can play within a garment. It's called maybe cheating, but you can make a lot of different bodies look beautiful if you really place the style lines just so. Color is definitely also really important. And I do follow what are the trends, but at the end of the day, I don't care about trends. What I care is about style. Style is not a trend. Style is timeless, and style is what looks good on you and what it is that you do with a particular garment. I have been blown away with how my customer merchandises and wear certain garments that I wouldn't even have conceived of. And it is gorgeous and it is beautiful. So it really depends, also how creative are you? Because you have a way of self-expressing yourself. And then there is the customer that is so gun shy, doesn't know how to dress and doesn't know what to buy. And you do a little bit more of hand holding by advising them based on their body shape of what would look good on them. So it's a multitude of things. And of course, I'm a very visual person, and I might get inspired by a color that I see, or I might get inspired by a fabric that I see, or I'm looking at even architecture inspires me, interiors inspire me. I mean, really, I walk through the world with my eyes wide open, and just because I might see it on a flower doesn't mean that I cannot translate an aspect of a flower, whether it's a leaf that I might turn into a print or into a color. Inspiration, where does inspiration strike, right? It's a download, and it's being aware of your immediate environment and how you view the world, right? Like we walk with blinders on. I try to take those blinders off and see things for what they might not be at the moment of what they appear to be, look beyond it, right? And that's really when inspiration strikes.
Has anything ever surprised you, like where you happen to find inspiration someplace that you would not have expected, but it actually
oh boy, frankly, there are so many moments where, for example, being in a webinar when we were still able to be amongst people, and there was a lady 2 rows ahead of me that was wearing this crazy hat, and the little feather that was in her hat, had the most gorgeous turquoise color. So at the end of the day, I approached her at the end of the webinar and I said, please don't consider me crazy, but I would love to take a picture of the feather that's on your head. And she just looked at me and I'm like, I'm a clothing designer and I'm really inspired by this color and I hope that I can capture it with my cell phone. So she like volunteered the hat and I took a picture. It's just one thing that I can think of right now, right?
yeah,
But I mean,
that's amazing.
it's
Inspiration strikes anywhere.
It's everywhere,
You
right?
never know.
So
You just have to you just have to be aware of it and have your eyes open.
Right. But here's the other piece, people think as designers we sit on this golden throne and we wave our wand and we design. I can honestly say that I spent less than 10% of my time designing. The rest of my time is technical execution. I'm a stickler for pattern making. I'm a stickler for accurate grading, making sure that there's consistency within my sizes, no matter what it is that I produce. Is it a woven? Is it a cotton sewn knit? Is it a sweater? Is it a heavy canvas? Is it a chiffon? It needs to be consistent. And the other piece is, the daily communication with my factories, it's the logistics behind the scenes.
Yep.
And having really relaunched less than 2 years ago, and let go of my big staff that I once had. I employed over 100 people in my previous companies. We're a skeleton crew right now. We're less than 10 people. So we took on, multitasking. And I like aspects of it because it puts me back in touch with so many different things that I did when we first launched our first and our second company, but now more than ever. And there is a value in that as well, because you get back in touch with what is really important. And again, if you're a business owner starting over, you have to do all those things. And
yeah. Oh, okay. I just thought of a question I want to ask you now.
yeah.
What does your day-to-day look like, in your business?
Hey.
Like what does your day consist of usually?
No day is like any other, right?
Hmm.
But usually I come into the office. I still go to the office because we are a very small team. We have strict COVID procedures. I open up my emails, first of all, right? To make sure that who communicated with me, what needs to be done, what is urgent, what do I need to focus on. Then I do a lot of inventory control, right? I need to make sure what is our inventory looking like, what do the sales look like, what are we running low on, what needs to be reordered, and what do I currently have in development, right? Communicating with the factories. There's a lot of import-export logistics. But then, when the time comes for me to actually having to create, I block all of this out while I maintain it in the background, but I primarily focus on design. And then I draw my data from sales, from customer feedback, from what's going on out there in the world. And then I decide, what are the important seasonal colors for the next season? Right now, I'm finding myself designing for, while I'm not seasonal, there's a certain seasonality in what it is that I do. I'm focusing on fall right now. What are going to be the fall colors we are going to be launching? What are going to be the new fabrications we adding to our non-seasonal fabrications that we carry throughout the seasons, throughout the years? And what are going to be the silhouettes? So I have this big visual board, right, with my colors, with my textures, and the silhouettes, the approximate silhouettes I want to plug in, and then I'm going to do the little the figure, the merchandising, pant with tops, pant with jackets. I lay it all visually out, what works best, because at the end, what matters to me is that my capsule works. You might have 12 new pieces in a capsule, but you can create 40 looks with it, because that also plays into less is more. You can do so much more with what it is, by buying those key items, and you can build on the wardrobe you already have. You don't have to start from scratch. So I keep all of that in mind in order to create a fluid consistency and a continuum, if you will, with something that you already have in your closet. So that's when the creative process happens. And then there's a lot of conversations that happen in my mind, right? Because I really need to be in my space. And there's also a certain download that happens. It sounds a little kumbaya, but I get informed somehow, some way, and I feel it in my heart. For me, it is a very emotional and a very also tactical experience, where when I finally have what it is that I think is going to be the right combination, after having informed it from the various data points that I have, I really do feel it in my heart to say it's done, it's complete. Now I can proceed with the patterns, and now I can proceed with sourcing the actual fabrics, or making sure my mills develop the fabrics that I want so they are sustainable and certifiable. And the process starts, then I do the in-house fitting. I do all the patterns in-house. I do all the grading in-house in order to keep consistency. And then I work with my factories overseas by supplying them with a perfect proto sample that we sew in-house. We supply them with perfect patterns, and all they need to do is then execute following the tech pack, if you will, and sending me a countersample that I can approve or comment on until I have the way it needs to be. And they're usually very good because I have long-standing relationships with my business partners overseas. And once I approve everything, then we go into production. Yeah, and then there's stringent quality control measures in place. And when production is done, it gets shipped to us and we do quality control in-house again. And before our customer receives any of our garments, I can guarantee them that it has been quality controlled 3 different times during the sewing, after it gets packaged, and then once again in-house. And we distribute all our orders from our warehouse here in Berkeley. So that kind of encompasses the whole process. And I'm usually in various stages of the process because it's fluid. I might be in production while I'm already starting the development of the new season, while I'm in constant communication of making sure products are being received or products are being reordered. So it is fluid, right? But it's ongoing. That's basically that in a nutshell. And there was a lot of details in between, but let's not go lost in the details, right?
Yeah, no, totally. You explained it very well. And, it seems like you're very hands-on and through this entire process. And, I find, producing garment, it's just, there's just so many moving parts to this business,
Oh my
right?
God. I think mainstream people have very little knowledge of what it really entails, the multiple moving parts, and then add international manufacturing into the game. It is so complex. At the end of the day, you get a garment and you're like, what's the big deal? It's like, do you have any idea how many hands touched it, and the processes that were involved, and the foundations that needed to build, the relationships, the multitude of complexities in order for you to receive that perfect garment that you hopefully will end up loving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you really have to love what you do to be in this business for as long as you have. And like you said, by sticking to your values and being true to who you are really keeps you in that long game, because it's not easy, right? You're gonna go hit rough patches like this. This is a really tough business, and if you don't love it and you're not doing something that you believe in, it's not gonna help you get through those rough, choppy patches, right?
Absolutely not. And Glennis, I had my moments where I honestly thought, why am I doing this to myself? This is like self-torture, where you don't draw a salary just because you want to make sure that you pay the rent, that you pay your employees. There is an easier life out there to be had. You can go and apply for a position and get your monthly paycheck. And when you go home, you're home. You can be with your family. As a business owner, it doesn't stop. It's 24/7. Your mind is constantly around your business, and it's tough.
Yeah.
And I actually hear it from my young daughter. She complains a lot, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, hey, I'm setting an example for you, right? So make something out of yourself, go out there. And the most important thing is love what you do. I feel that I have been fortunate enough, right, to have always had that clarity of what it is that I wanted to do, because I really sympathize with a lot of people that don't have that clarity. But on the other side, there's a price to be paid for that clarity. And believe me, I have been through hell and back, no less than probably 3 or 4 times. And when I say hell, it has been hell, without going into details. Because at the end of the day, it is a very financially consuming business, and we are not VC funded, right? We are self-funded. We have sacrificed everything that we once made. By even, refinancing the home that we live in order to keep going. And there is an easier way. And while I could be going out there and probably hit up the VC circle, at the end of the day, that takes away too much time from what it is that I need to be focusing on. And I don't even know that that's necessarily my game. Do you know what I mean? Because, like it or not, while there is great momentum that has changed, even in the VC world, it's still a very male dominated business. And when a woman with a consumer good comes to them that is not tech or young male dominated, they don't get what it is that you have to offer. And while there is definitely a gradual change happening, like it or not, it's still a boys' game. And do I really want to go out there and get eaten up by or laughed at? No, not necessarily, right? So while I'm not completely just crediting that I might be doing that at some point, I'm not there yet. Although I could certainly need the funds in order to grow faster and put this message on the map, which is a very important message. I'm having to do that a step at a time. And yeah, again, my passion drives me, my vision pulls me.
Yeah, it's all about alignment, I think, and finding the right person. If you were going to go that route, that person you have to align with in terms of their values as well,
completely,
right? It's not you trying to having to convince them to come on board with you and to believe in your message. It's like something that they already have, and it's like, okay, there's that alignment, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, so I just have a couple more questions here. What are some of the tips you would give to fashion entrepreneurs and clothing brand owners who are just starting out or are thinking of launching a clothing line?
I will commend them for their courage, and I will never discourage anybody to enter this incredibly exciting business. If you really think about it, it is a very exciting business, but to really enter it with their eyes wide open, and to maybe set their ego aside. And again, I say that very carefully because not everybody is necessarily driven by ego. But what I found out is that this industry is littered with big egos. You need to approach it with, why do you want to put your stamp on a brand? Is it driven by your creative vision? Or is it because you're trying to solve a problem? Or is it because you are discovering that there is a niche somewhere that hasn't really been addressed? I think your success will come from speaking to a customer that you clearly understand, because it takes time to find your product market fit. And I would highly recommend do some research before launching. Try to at least have a rough understanding of who that customer is and why your product will be desired by that customer. Because if you don't have somewhat of clarity around what does your product really do that will resonate with whoever your customer might be, you might be spending a lot of time and money that's going to go nowhere. And be also very aware that clothing is a very cash intensive business, and also get your financial house in order, and knowing what is your runway before you launch, where might be the next investment be coming from, and if it's not an investment, do you qualify for loans? So there's multiple ways of doing that, but don't just be the creative head. If you don't have a financial head or any business sense, then try to at least partner with somebody or have access to somebody that can guide you through the financial landscape, because that is the other very important component besides product market fit. And also make sure that you have solid resources. Know your fabric vendors, know your manufacturers, know your calendar, plan your year ahead. What is your year going to look like? Also from a financial standpoint, you have to make assumptions. You have your launch date here. This is how much it costs you in order to produce, but when is the money going to come in? And don't forget marketing. Just because you might have a Shopify store, if you want to go direct to consumer, I don't know whether you're going to be in wholesale or DTC, but be aware, by just opening up a site, you're not going to drive crazy traffic to your site. Your friends and family will probably support you at first, but then there is the marketing expense. Who's going to do this for you? Do you have enough money to hire a marketing agency? And if not, are you going to do your marketing? How knowledgeable are you about marketing? Or can you bring somebody in that's not going to break the bank, with your marketing efforts? So it is very complex, and I can probably go on and on and on. I'm just giving, you some key points right now, but all of that is super important for you to get to where you're going in order to get up and running and keep the momentum. And then there is clearly the creative piece, right? Your stamp. That sets you apart from anybody else, because believe it or not, this is a very, very crowded space. How are you going to stand out? What value do you offer, right? How does that differentiate you? And again, how authentic are you? If you enter that because you want to be a designer and you are this creative genius, that's great, but there's more to it. And be aware that that is definitely a lot more complex than just being the creative genius that you think you might be, or the brand that you want to represent, or the brand that you are.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. These are all very important things to consider, I think, when you are starting a business. If you're strictly just want to design and create, then I think just go get a job as a designer.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a business, you got to know all these things, right? Or at least find people who can help you with that, because, you know, so much of it depends on everything, like you said, right? It's all these things, and you have to learn and understand these parts of the business, especially like the cash flow part as well, right? And how to fund your business and stuff. So that's really amazing advice.
And to add to that, you know, I would also highly recommend go work for somebody. That will open up your eyes, you know, it will make you understand the complexities, and then reevaluate if this is really what you want to do. Because I have known people that wanted to have their business, ended up working for other brands, and decided, not a day in hell do I want to start my own business.
No way in hell do I want to do this.
And you know what? Others gained their experience, made their mistakes with the companies they worked for, and decided, yeah, I'm ready now. I understand it. So that's really important too.
Yeah, that's great advice, because that's the route that I took. I worked in the industry for a lot of big brands before I went into running my own clothing design company. So I was able to take a lot of that experience and the systems and processes that we were using with those companies, and I implemented into my business. So I was able to run that for over a decade. And so much of it was like, you know, a lot of it had to do with just like troubleshooting, problem solving, so much like operational stuff. Like I would say probably 10% was creative, but perhaps in terms of the designing part, but perhaps maybe, you know, creative can also come in the form of problem solving, because you have to use creativity to come up to solve the problem. But I almost felt like, you know, there was always something going on every day. It was just like, okay, it requires this, you know, kind of creative thinking, and that you just would not even expect, right? And you don't know until you actually hit that problem or come across that.
That's right.
So, but I think that's just all part of running a business, and you know, you have to have a certain level of be able that I don't know, the gut, right, to be able to handle this, right?
That's right.
Business, right?
That's right.
So I just want to ask you, my last question would be, what do you see to be the future for fashion?
The way I see it from the moment where we're at right now, right, is I truly believe that we are unfortunately going to get away from the middleman. And what I mean by that is brands that have the ability to do direct to consumer and also eventually have their own stores will win. I don't think that wholesale will ever completely gonna go away, but I think there is such a value of being able to communicate directly with your customer instead of hearing it through your representative and then through your retailer that you sell to. That direct communication with the end consumer is really key. And I don't think retail is completely going to go away ever, just because, like it or not, we like the tangible experience. There is a social element also, hanging out with your friends, having a fun afternoon, you know, going shopping, going exploring. But I think retail might also change into more of an experience of a showcasing right? And a lot of technology will probably change the retail world forever, where you might just go into a store in order to physically experience what they have to offer, but then you order everything online and it gets shipped to you directly without you having to carry tons of bags. So I think that's where we're kind of heading. But then again, it's need to wait to be seen. I'm sure there's a lot of incredible innovation happening right now behind the scenes that we aren't even aware of. But I think artificial intelligence plays a role here. I think a lot of innovation and authenticity plays a big role. Brands with an authentic message catering to real people are going to be the ones that actually stand out instead of doing all that frou-frou craziness. And again, that's the art of fashion. That is not the commercial aspect of fashion.
So interesting. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have to wait and see.
What comes out of all of this once we get over this whole pandemic situation, right?
That's right.
And see what emerges. So it's going to be very interesting. We should have
Yeah.
a follow-up discussion.
Definitely. Definitely.
But I absolutely loved talking to you today. I really enjoy having you here on as a guest.
Thank you.
And where can people find you?
Well, they can look me up at www.stellacarakasi.com. And I'm going to spell that, right? StellaCarakasi.com. Stella at stellacarakasi.com is my personal email. If you want to shoot me a personal email, you can. Other than that, you can find me on my website, which is stellacarakasi.com.
And also you're on Instagram as well, right?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. So if you type in my name, I'll pop up. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, no problem. That's wonderful. Thank you so much
Thank you
for being here today and talking with me and sharing all your wonderful stories and your experience. And, we can probably go on for hours. There's so many more things that I want to talk to you about.
I know. I mean, Glennis, I feel the same. We have this connection and I'm really grateful that you had me on your podcast today. So thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll pick up where we left off.